915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk, Adabeza Gardner, demonstrating so far with the high and the wave over there. Yes, back live today after that unexpected absence yesterday, but back at it, and boy, do we got a lot to delve into. As I kind of called this shot earlier in the week, I'll be surprised if we get too much more beyond immigration, border security, and the very many different aspects that are still developing in our area as of almost this moment. I mean, we've got state, local, federal, different levels of responses, policies being rolled out, and just a whole lot more. So we're going to do our best to break it down. And then, of course, get into y'all's calls. We also have a Rodney Linkus wishing good afternoon to you as well. And Adabeza Gardner. Yeah, I missed y'all as well, but let's just say managed to injure myself in just the stupidest of ways, so wasn't able to leave the house. But we're back at it, and I'm not moving the fastest, but enough to get into this chair and be able to talk with y'all as we try to do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. Hope you found some of the retrospective useful, as we've had some of those players and things going on in our area. Also, Mondo Moncada over on the Twitch stream. Yo to you as well. And a lot of stuff we're getting into, dropping those likes and reacts, including a Flaco Jimenez and Idabeza Gardner. Do appreciate that, primarily over on the Facebook, but hey, wherever you're able to tune in to us, see us, add your 2 cents, etc., is the right place for you to be as we continue our mission, dual missions, to talk about the things that affect us here in the Borderland and have live local talk radio, because no one else is going to talk about the situations we're dealing with or encountering here like the people who live here, the people who deal with these issues, etc. So let's delve just straight into those. Yeah, just spoiler alert, immigration and those parts of it are definitely going to be major aspects of it. I mean, we've got city enforcement issues that have been going on, doing basically offering surrenders and transportations to the county processing facility ahead of increased enforcement, basically the way it's being described. So that's already going on, and why, among other things, including from reporting from our news partners at KFOX 14, they're saying that there is a less of a presence on the streets by migrants and people waiting for shelters or transportation out of town, however you end up wanting to put it. So that's an aspect of this, but also statewide, more enforcement possibilities, including potential use of tools being mentioned from the Texas legislature of being able to essentially have enforcements without there being, from the Texas Tribune, El Paso Matters specifically working on this one, thwarting Democratic efforts, House Republicans revive border policing unit in early morning vote. So more state level efforts certainly going on there, but also more enforcement operations involving the federal, but then certainly more differences. It's sometimes being referred to as, I've been hearing this mentioned, as an asylum ban. So why that is being discussed by some, and spoiler alert, immigration and migrant advocates not happy about this new policy. So we'll break that down as well. So a lot of moving parts on this, but do have a couple other things that we might be able to get to, including more of the post-mortem on the election, as we are still, definitely looking at the runoff elections and those aspects of it. But El Paso Inc. with an interesting breakdown of Proposition K and the issues around it, particularly the advertising around it. Well, I'll just read to the headline here: $25 per vote, the cost to defeat Prop K. So there's a lot going on there. And Mondo Moncada asking specifically, a lot of immigrants left downtown area. Do you know where they went? Yes, that's one of the immediate things that actually is coming out from our news partners, as well as other regional reporting here. I think El Paso Matters has some of the best reporting on here. Their article titled, as of late yesterday, hundreds of El Paso migrants accept Border Patrol surrender request. As we also have Eric von Holstein-Ratho, aloha to you as well, and John Brazelton, guys commenting on the presence I had on the Beyond the Beltway show over the weekend. Not the first time I've been on there. This is like the third or fourth. I haven't been keeping track. So calling it 5 minutes of national radio fame, but sugarcoating it. I'd love for you to tell me where I was wrong exactly about the situation dealing with it there. So, then Eric McNabb apparently misunderstanding the time to it. We're on air from 4 to 6 p.m., just so you know, not 24/7, and get against Camp Prop K in that. I mean, no, the money that was spent on this station and other ones around it, media buys, you can actually see the breakdown. I've done it myself, so it's not that hard to find if you're willing to crunch the numbers, that is. But we're on air 4 to 6 p.m., but thank you for letting us live rent-free in your house 24, in your head, that is, not putting up a house 24/7 in any case, I do suppose. But getting back to the actual question from Mondo there, what happened there? What's going on? So, of course, part of the situation involving the actual, what's the way to put it correctly, involving the shelters and who cannot enter into them deals with the method of entry into the United States. Of course, there are legal and illegal entry methods, and asylum, this is going to be really hard to de-entangle, so I'm going to try to stick to one issue at a time here. So again, the article title from El Paso Matters, hundreds of El Paso migrants accept Border Patrol surrender requests, mentioning in their reporting that there were flyers that were being passed around, specifically downtown El Paso, reading, translated from Spanish, did you cross the border between international bridges? If that's the case, were you processed by Border Patrol agents or some other customs or border protection officials? And going on to say that basically if you did not, if the answer to that is that you were not processed, you are not going to be able to be, well, receiving the shelter services and also basically enhanced enforcement actions. Another article title there from El Paso Matters on this earlier this week. CBP says it will begin, quote, enforcement operation, end quote, in El Paso Tuesday. So it has been updated as of yesterday, but saying that they were specifically doing this against migrants who have been processed for entry, who have not rather been processed for entry into the United States. They did say, quote, they will not take enforcement action in or near a location that would restrain people access to essential services or engagement in essential activities to the fullest extent possible, which I think that includes basically like sanitation or some of those, medical services that have been being talked about, though it wasn't totally clear. But the way that it has been, that drawdown that you're talking about is that essentially a bunch ended up taking the offer to go through and surrender, essentially. So that's one of the efforts that is going on already. So, yeah, and if you're going to say that I'm wrong on numbers, you best come with your own. If you just say it's wrong, you're entitled to do so. But literally, most of the reporting on this, that there were hundreds to thousands at various points, less now seeming to be at this point, as there have been. The flyer asking for the, again, quoting from El Paso Matters on this, the flyer asking migrants to turn themselves into Border Patrol for proper processing, handouts to a person at about 750 migrants around Sacred Heart Church in South El Paso by Border Patrol enforcement agents in plain clothes, marking the first step in that, quote, in targeted enforcement operations. So that's part of the numbers. And you want to look at the pictures and the numbers there for yourself here. I would certainly encourage you to take a look. I mean, I think our news partners at KFOX 14 reporting on this as well. But again, the picture from El Paso Matters showing people going around the corner and down the block near downtown El Paso, the buildings in the background of the processing center, subtitled, or the header for the actual picture. Migrants, mostly from Venezuela, form a line to surrender themselves to Border Patrol on Tuesday after receiving a warning of an impending, quote, enforcement action. So that's why there's a lot of focus on that. At least 300 people just in that line alone is what's being noted there. So asylum and the focus on it is still absolutely going on, but there's a whole lot more details to get into it as well. But that's one specific question. Y'all bring it up, and there's a whole lot more that we'll try to get into across this hour, or both hours of the show, before we get into the calls. Anyway, so what is going on with asylum? Again, you may have heard phrases such as changes in requirements. Asylum ban is one that I've been hearing thrown around today. So we'll delve into that and part of what's going on there. And again, if you can't understand the difference between different times and locations, such as hundreds and thousands in different locations, let's just say it's a good thing you're not a census taker. Anyway, back after this break with more Talk El Paso. Back with you live in the studio here, back at it. And we got a lot of room to make and ground to cover. So back after this with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
El Paso police responding to an accident southbound Sean Haggerty at Gateway South. On Penndale, south of North Loop Drive, there's an accident with police on the scene. Try Zaragoza or Roseway as your options. And downtown, an injury accident, Stanton at Main. Also seeing some slowing northbound Mesa Street for the downtown exits to Donovan Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Biggie Bag. When you think Wendy's Biggie Bag, think your go-to meal deal with your choice of JBC, double stack or crispy chicken sandwich, plus 4-piece nugs, junior fries, and a small soft drink. Biggie hits every time. So grab a Biggie Bag today. U.S. price and participation may vary. Third-party delivery pricing may be higher.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. This ad is paid for by the settlement specialists. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the most common cancers in the United States. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, you could be entitled to cash compensation. Bayer, the owner of Roundup, will pay more than $10 billion to cancer victims of weed killer Roundup. Call our weed killer cancer hotline now to see if you're entitled to cash compensation. Roundup has been one of the most commonly used herbicides in the U.S. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup, call now. Our team is here to fight for everyday people and to get you the compensation you may deserve. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, even if the loved one has passed away, call 800-778-9713 now to see if you are entitled to compensation. But hurry. Time is limited. Call 800-778-9713. 800-778-9713.
Hi, I'm Scotty Clark from Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. The heat is back, so get ready, El Paso. It's going to be a long, hot summer. At Scott Heating and Cooling, we're ready to help you maintain and service your home and business HVAC system. We service all major brands of heating and cooling equipment, as well as commercial kitchen equipment and walk-in freezers. With appointments available 7 days a week, make an appointment online or call Scott Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing today at 915-595-4529.
Newsmax is conducting an urgent poll asking if it was right for Fox News to fire Tucker. Do you want Tucker back on TV? Let us know what you think. Vote in the Newsmax poll. Just text us now. Text the word RESPOND to 39747. That's RESPOND to 39747. Let your voice be heard. Text RESPOND to 39747. Millions made the switch to Newsmax. You can too. Texting enrolls for automated text messages. Message and data rates may apply.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Lot of information going around and swirling around immigration, border security, the efforts underway, the changes that have even been unveiled today. But a couple more notes I want to make on particularly the local angle here. Most of the reporting in our area is going on that, quoting El Paso matters here, more than 2,000 migrants are crowded into camps outside Sacred Heart Catholic Church and the Opportunity Center for the Homeless in South El Paso. That's specifically noted as of Monday. So, of course, some of those numbers have changed as of today. But there's, of course, this is all before tomorrow, May 11th, end of Title 42 and the anticipation that comes with that. And some of the new laws or policies would be the actual right way to put it, at least federally speaking, that have been put forth, including, again, from our news partners at KFOX 14, U.S. to limit asylum at Mexico border, open 100 migration hubs, specifically reporting from the AP on this, that the plan is that the administration will begin denying asylum to migrants who show up at the U.S.-Mexico border without first applying online or seeking protection in a country they pass through, according to that new rule released Thursday. Now, that article from our news partners goes into some decent detail of it, including of not being a they note that it's not a total ban, but certainly will be having quite a lot of differences and changes to the process. And it is also noted that this is decently similar to similar rules, particularly pursued back in 2019 by the Trump administration at that point, which was blocked by federal courts, among other things. A decent breakdown actually coming from this over on Twitter. One of the ones I was most recommended to was at Molly M. O'Toole, former reporter with the LA Times, saying that specifically Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas just held a big meeting to train what post Title 42 new, quote, asylum ban, end quote, rule looks like per a U.S. CIS employee. That's United States Customs and Immigration Services. And to one of the questions being asked immediately there, who is subject to the rule, applies to non-citizens who enter the U.S. from Mexico across the southwest land border or adjacent coastal borders if they traveled through a country that is a signatory to the 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees or the 1967 Protocol, and specifically noted that Mexico is a signatory to both of those. So what that means is that essentially non-Mexicans, not people of Mexican citizenship that appear at the southwest border in order to claim asylum, unless they have proof they have already made a claim, are going to be denied it, is the plan at least being put forth by the administration immediately, subject to, I mean, if there are going to be the same type of movements against this from federal courts or other things like it. We'll see how that develops. That's a crystal ball moment, at least for the time being. But the idea of it being similar to, okay, it's not MPP or migrant protection protocols, remain in Mexico policies, or similar type things to that, but it's closer to the first safe country, which I don't know if it was really policy so much as it was a phrase to describe what they were requiring for asylum proceedings, because way it has been. I mean, we've talked quite a lot about Title VIII and how that is about, immigration courts processing and can be towards expedited removals, but it is essentially not a denial of entry into the country as Title 42 had been being used. So this seems somewhere in between. Again, it's being referred to in some cases as an asylum ban, noted as others, including by the AP and our news partners at KFOX 14, as not being a total ban, but it certainly is getting a lot of conversation and potentially criticism on this. The rule specifically reads, quote, economic and political instability around the world is fueling the highest levels of migration since World War II, including in the Western Hemisphere. And that's going on to say, with known crossings from Mexico reaching an all-time high last year due to a, quote, unprecedented exodus of migrants at different times from countries such as Brazil, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, Haiti, Nicaragua, Peru, and Venezuela. And among others, such as the Refugees International, saying, among other things, that the new rule formalizing sweeping restrictions on asylum access, the Biden administration is putting border politics ahead of the safety of refugees, end quote, from Jeremy, the president of the same, other calling it ludicrous, life-threatening, and misguided, according, again, to the reporting there. So that's some of the policies that are being put forth on this. So I'm not going to say I called this one exactly, but I'm going to stand by my assertion that even if there were to be some new sweeping policy that was put forth ahead of Thursday, of which I'm going to call this in the vein, if not exactly what I thought was going to be or exactly had in mind, I think we're still, at least in our local area, still pretty well locked in for whatever Thursday is going to bring. Now, there's been a lot of assertions, a lot of concern, a lot of different levels of expectation about what is going to happen. Again, just some of the input that's come into this already. We've seen the Border Tactical Force deployed specifically to El Paso by Governor Greg Abbott. There's also the 1,500 troops that were supposed to be arriving as of today at Fort Bliss and stationed here and deployed both here and to other sectors of the border, including some of the units from Fort Bliss. I do believe it involves at least one MP, military, police, and other support units from Fort Bliss as well, along with others that were being sent here. So there is a lot of resources and personnel in these cases that are coming to this area. But among other things, the city of El Paso holding a tour a little bit earlier today and a news conference at a Bassett Middle School, as it's going to now be set up as a migrant shelter. Full video over from our news partners at KFOX 14. The event began at 3 p.m. So some of the initial parts of what was being expected there, including an update and answering of some of the questions, and confirm that Bassett and Moorhead middle schools will be opening this week to serve as migrant shelters, but unable to provide exact dates. So expect further updates from our news partners in their evening newscasts when it comes to that. So there's a lot of input and a lot of different particularities in this. But again, I'm hearing it put mostly as an asylum ban. There are exceptions in the rule for anyone with an acute medical emergency or facing imminent and extreme threats to life or safety, such as an imminent threat of rape, kidnapping, torture, or murder. Does not apply to children traveling alone, but will apply to families. So I think that's part of the reason it's being referred to as, at least officially, and in some circles, not as a full ban, but as a definite restriction on asylum and the availability of it. Among other things, there's, of course, the regional processing centers that is being talked about being opened in the wake of the end of Title 42. And the idea is that these will be deployed about 1,000 asylum officials to conduct expedited screenings for asylum seekers in those regional centers, among other things. And as is also noted there, and we've talked about in the past, that even though many ask for asylum, the legal pathway is narrow and most do not meet the standard. It's often been mentioned and put forth as just the standard practice. I mean, we've seen certainly a large increase in the amount of cases of asylum being claimed, differences in the patterns of migration and people attempting to cross the border, among other things. So this is part of the situation that we are getting closer to, we'll see what happens even as soon as midnight tonight and getting into, therefore, on Thursday. Of course, I think we'll be doing some full coverage on that tomorrow. That's my full expectations. And Willie Jenkins, among other things, saying a catch-22. McDabb saying Biden's rule is going to be deemed illegal by the courts. Again, if it's in the same vein and the same kind of reasoning that's been put forth as during the previous administration, it's possible. We'll see what actually ends up happening, because I don't know. I feel like if they were expecting it to go the exact same way, I don't think it'll work out that way. But among other things, Ed Clora saying Biden breaks campaign promise, restores Trump immigration policy just one day before Title 42 expires. Migrants prepared to go storm the southern border. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen exact reporting on this, but that's one of the expectations that's been going around, that, you get a large enough group of frustrated people, you start getting into essentially mob mentalities of one person's doing it and therefore, everyone starts running kind of situations. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility, but again, it's been noted that there have been a lot of both, again, personnel and resources deployed specifically to our area and the border in general. Again, further on the reporting from our news partners at KFOX 14, there are about 24,000 law enforcement officers stationed along the entire U.S.-Mexico border, and then already the 1,500 that have been sent, and the, again, 2,500 that are already here. And there's already an expectation that this is going to not be immediately solved. Saying that, the Biden administration, Biden himself saying it remains to be seen. It's going to be chaotic for a while. I'm hoping that won't be an understatement, but I think we're locked in for whatever tomorrow is going to bring already. It's kind of interesting. I'd kind of mentioned leaflets as frankly, almost a psyops campaign in order to counteract the propaganda that has certainly, and that's basically what it is from the cartels, propaganda about what is or isn't possible and why you should definitely trust them and give them money despite their super dubious bona fides. But the use of flyers in downtown El Paso along that is interesting in its own regards, even if it wasn't exactly the same way, so as I was envisioning. But anyway, tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, talking a little bit more about some of the state efforts, as well as some of the busing and other things, and already some of the back end happening on that processing in our area. Again, I fully expect this is going to dominate the next couple of days, if not longer, folks. So strap in. We got more to talk about as we're back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Phone calls a little bit later, as we usually do. But in any case, stay tuned after this break on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. Starting tomorrow, the Biden administration will deny asylum to migrants who show up at the border without first applying online or seeking protection in a country they passed through. That's according to a new rule that was released today. It's part of new measures meant to crack down on illegal border crossings while creating new legal pathways, including a plan to open 100 regional migration hubs. The crackdown on asylum seekers is similar to a 2019 Trump-era policy that was eventually struck down in federal court. Migrant advocates say that Biden is curtailing the right to seek asylum as it existed since the enactment of the Refugee Act of 1980. Meantime, the city of El Paso today held a news conference at a vacant middle school that they once again will use as an emergency migrant shelter. Bassett Middle School was first used as a migrant shelter last year during the most recent migrant influx. Mayor Oscar Leeser today said that the number of migrants on El Paso streets has gone down in the past 24 hours, but he says no one knows what'll happen next week. As Title 42 does expire tomorrow, that was a Trump-era health order that allowed border agents to rapidly expel most asylum seekers. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
El Paso police responding to an accident southbound Sean Haggerty at Gateway South. On Penndale, south of North Loop Drive, there's an accident with police on the scene. Try Zaragoza or Roseway as your options. And downtown, an injury accident, Stanton at Main. Also seeing some slowing northbound Mesa Street for the downtown exits to Donovan Drive. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. A milder start for tomorrow morning with lows down into the 50s and 60s, and then a windy one for our Wednesday. In fact, wind advisory in effect for tomorrow. Southwest winds 25 to 35 miles per hour. As we look at your Thursday, partly cloudy skies, cooler and breezy with a high around 84 degrees. And I want to mention really quickly, still seeing those chances for showers and storms Saturday and Sunday. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go.
Sharing your health story matters.
I lost my sister to cervical cancer. When I'm teaching about women's cancers, I'm thinking about her, and I'm doing this for her.
Joining the All of Us research program means contributing to research that may help people of different backgrounds.
This research process will only become better if we have more diverse communities involved. We need to be represented. We need to be part of this medical breakthrough.
Take part in the largest health database of its kind.
Get involved with all of us, because any medical breakthrough that we'll see has to have your input. It has to have part of you in it.
Share your health stories today and help guide the discoveries of tomorrow. Learn more at joinallofus.org/NIH. This message is paid for by the All of Us Research Program.
Pamela played soccer but had trouble breathing. Our team diagnosed and treated the problem. We are the only pediatric board-certified radiologists and experts in the region. There's only one El Paso Children's Hospital.
Need to hire? Need Indeed. Their hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates in one place. Sponsor a job and immediately get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit. This report is sponsored by Indeed.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Yeah, immigration, border security, changing policies, federal, state, local responses to all of this is definitely the major topic for today. I mean, there's a few other things percolating out there. We do have runoff elections looming. We got some more breakdown of the cost of the fight against Proposition K that's out there, but immigration I fully expect to be one of our major points. So a lot of people tuning in and chiming in for that. Dropping those likes and reacts, we appreciate Amber Banda, Rick Reyes, Bernadette Bandicole, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, Flaco Medicine, Ida Beza Gardner, among others, and of course Talk El Paso, brought to you in part by Sunland Park, Chrysler Dodge, Jeep Ram Fiat. Find them at 950 Crockett Street, El Paso, and give them a call, 915-529-4739. That's 915-529-4739. And so a lot of people chiming in along also with Google Iske over on the YouTube channel. Hello to you as well, and anyone chiming in wanting to talk about this, because we'll certainly agree that the idea of mob mentality can be dangerous, and we've already seen, even before this point, even before we're reaching it's hard to pinpoint what exactly would have been a fever pitch, but certainly seems like the amplitude keeps rising on the crest of this wave that we are definitely, hopefully, going to continue to riding and not be crashed upon. We've already had a couple of incidents happening at either protests near or approaches to the central parts of some of the ports of entry, some of them being closed down at points in time. And of course, there have been other incidents, particularly across the border, with that fire at the Migrant Detention Center in Juarez that has led to multiple prosecutions now being charged with, and including those that were part of it. So there's a lot that has been going on already leading up to this point, even. That's part of the reason that, among other things, City of El Paso has been seeking clarification from the federal government about migrant access to shelters, because, the actual availability of it and the usefulness of it, given the situation, and if we are looking at there being thousands of crossings. The estimates of those that have been waiting just in Ciudad Juarez alone, and this is an estimate of a couple of weeks ago, if not a better part of a month at this point, of there being like 35,000 to 40,000, give or take. That's a little bit dated at this point even. So don't know if it's increased or decreased or stayed the same, but some of the estimates being thrown around now is that there's going to be about 10 to 15,000 seeking to cross pretty immediately on either Thursday or in the days immediately after that. And so the availability of the shelters, including, again, Bassett being the subject of the tour that our news partners at KFOX 14 will be bringing a little bit more on a little bit later in the day. But of course, Moorhead Middle School, the other one that is being talked about being activated for the same. One of the quotes coming out, again, as noted by our news partners here at KFOX 14, speaking with City's Communication Director La Cruz Acosta, saying, quote, "Once a decision has been made, it really depends on the situation at the site. So we go into it, assess the situation with the property, and determine what is needed in order to make it livable." Saying that they will be opening, again, those two schools as part of it, but that it may take, again, quoting from Laura Cruz Acosta here, quote, "could be days, could be hours. It really is dependent on a couple of things. I'm not on the property, so I don't have that expertise in the terms of the knowledge associated with opening up of the facility, but also because of the fact that there are, undocumented, those that may be going from illegal crossings in between the points of entry, among other things, because, the administration has certainly been pushing the CBP One app in order to schedule the appointments. Some of the top of the hour news breaks, I think, have been addressing that as well, and the frustration that has come along, because apparently some are getting through, but not anywhere near a significant portion of it enough to forestall some of the major parts of the frustration that are coming along with it. So basically, if they don't have the people trying to access these shelters, as the city and the county run ones, that is, outside of the NGO or local nonprofit community ones, they don't have that I-862 form, which is the first step for migrants to try and claim asylum, and so therefore have not been processed. These shelters are not going to be available to them, or at least that has been the case. Again, quoting from Cruz Acosta here, quote, "We've asked the federal government to provide us with a little bit of more detail because we don't know what form will allow or not allow, and that's a question we're asking the federal government." And so there are, of course, been the situations we're talking about with people turning themselves into upon those flyers that were being distributed to the thousands waiting in and around the area of Sacred Heart Church already, and were taken to the El Paso County Migrant Support Services Center. And some of the update coming on that as of late yesterday, further from our news partners there, migrants who entered U.S. and El Paso legally given, quote, "notice to appear," end quote, paperwork. So some of the processing that's been going on there. And even on the CBP center that's at 1101 South Oregon Street, that's where the large lines that were able to be seen, they are going to be processed either under Title 8 or Title 42 in some circumstances. So some of the streets were already looking vacant, but there's a lot more preparation that I've also heard from people going down and around the area. Some saying it seems more vacant, but that also there's more, say, at porta-johns and other sanitation facilities being set up, because I think that there's still a lot of anticipation headed towards tomorrow, as is pretty firmly going to be the case. I don't think that whatever is going to happen on this day is not going to continue being the case, but want to talk a little bit more about specifically the state level efforts. We talked previously about how there is that change that has, or at very least the movement towards further deployments going on by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, basically in support of the Operation Lone Star efforts, the quote-unquote tactical border security squad they've deployed, but another actual law being passed, noted again by El Paso Matters and the Texas Tribune, starting off by saying, working after midnight Wednesday, Texas House Republicans revived key parts of a bill to create a new state border policing unit, noting further that upending Democrats' day-long efforts to sink it ahead of an impending important bill passing deadline. This is House Bill 20, saying it was brought down on a technicality late last night, but then an early morning vote today, about 90 to 51, it was brought back. And so it would create the Border Protection Unit, which is meant to use non-deadly force to deter people from crossing the Mexican border, with its officers able to, quote, arrest, apprehend, or detain persons crossing the Texas-Mexico border unlawfully in border region counties. And members of the policing unit would not have to be law enforcement officers. Again, reporting from the Texas Tribune on that. So very much different ways these efforts are progressing. I mean, the federal is, well, we've talked a lot about the federal, but on the state level, deterrence and prevention seems to be one of the major parts of it. I mean, that's very much been what Governor Greg Abbott has been more than willing to talk about in the lead up to this. I mean, there's been a whole lot of arrests and other type of state level enforcement and prosecutions going along with this, even ahead of this, going back a couple of years now at this point, I'd be firmly willing to say. So that's part of the prelude. And now leading up to this law, I mean, the actual sponsor of the bill, as noted by, again, El Paso Matters and the Texas Tribune, Schaefer pitched this bill as a way to help Texas better control the crossings of migrants and combat dangerous drugs at the Mexican border, noting the fentanyl crisis, among other things. So that's part of what is being put into place on this. Whether or not that will be able to be in place in time for this, I'm not quite sure about that actually existing, but it's certainly with an eye towards at the end of Title 42 and the aftermath, or just going forward from it. So that's a lot of some of the details of the many swirling issues. I am positive we'll have more to talk about tomorrow whenever it comes to all of these, because I mean, even with the surrender requests that have already been going on, that's in the order of a couple of thousand. And again, with the anticipation of there being 10,000 or more attempting or wanting to do immediate-ish crossings or in some format. Tomorrow is definitely going to be that red letter day that we've been expecting all along here. So with that, let's go ahead and take that next break and get to those phone calls. We'll go ahead and open up those lines now, since we did not have that yesterday. So let's dive into it and dedicate the rest of the show to that. So that number to call, of course, if you want to get on the line, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Also touching on some of the comments and more of this, including Rhonda Reynolds over on the YouTube saying thank you. Well, we're happy to talk about this and continue our discussion after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. Starting tomorrow, the Biden administration will deny asylum to migrants who show up at the border without first applying online or seeking protection in a country they passed through. That's according to a new rule that was released today. It's part of new measures meant to crack down on illegal border crossings while creating new legal pathways, including a plan to open 100 regional migration hubs. The crackdown on asylum seekers is similar to a 2019 Trump-era policy that was eventually struck down in federal court. Migrant advocates say that Biden is curtailing the right to seek asylum as it existed since the enactment of the Refugee Act of 1980. Meantime, the city of El Paso today held a news conference at a vacant middle school that they once again will use as an emergency migrant shelter. Bassett Middle School was first used as a migrant shelter last year during the most recent migrant influx. Mayor Oscar Leeser today said that the number of migrants on El Paso streets has gone down in the past 24 hours, but he says no one knows what'll happen next week. As Title 42 does expire tomorrow, that was a Trump-era health order that allowed border agents to rapidly expel most asylum seekers. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound starting to slow down a little bit from the Trans Mountain to the I-10 eastbound starting to slow down from Trans Mountain to the Patriot with 5-minute delays, 7-minute delays northbound Mesa Street from the downtown exits up to Donovan Drive. An accident in Penndale just south of North Loop Drive, and police are in an earlier crash southbound Sean Haggerty at Gateway South. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. During Staples Small Business Deal Days, find new deals in-store each week. Plus, rewards members get $30 back in rewards when they spend $100 or more. Rewards offer ends May 13th. Limit 1. Redeemable in-store only. Save big for your business at Staples.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Ricardo, quote, "This is one of the greatest inventions ever. I know this may sound like I'm exaggerating, but this sucker is amazing. The first time I did it, I couldn't believe what came out of my sinuses. I could breathe with ease. My wife just bought one too. Thank you for this product," unquote. He's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
You've heard the big news. Fox News fired Tucker Carlson. Now, Newsmax is conducting an urgent poll asking you if it was right to fire Tucker. And we want to know if you want Tucker back on cable TV. It's easy to vote in the Newsmax poll. Just text us and we'll instantly send you the poll. Text the word BIRD to 39747. That's BIRD to 39747. Let us know what you think. Vote today. Let your voice be heard about Tucker. Text the word BIRD to 39747 now. Millions of Americans are making the switch to America's fastest-growing news channel, Newsmax. Every day, watch Rob Schmidt, Eric Bolling, Greta Van Susteren, Mike Huckabee, and more. Even President Trump says he likes Newsmax. Vote in the Tucker poll. Text BIRD to 39747. Texting enrolls for automated text messages. Message and data rates may apply.
Finding a great hire can be a challenge. That's why there's Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 toward your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Rosetta Stone, where language is learned. RosettaStone.com.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program. We do have those phone lines open, and I'm sure there's a lot to say and to be said on the very many issues that we're dealing with, facing, immigration, border security, and all the related ones. Definitely taking up all of the air in the room lately, but there are a few others percolating, so still doing that to whole local focus as we do during the week. Getting closer to Friday, and I'm sure this will be definitely a gangbuster one. But in any case, if you want to get on that line, pull up at the moment, but keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Let's dive right into it. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Oh, Andrew, I'd like to propose something.
Sure.
I think it would be really I think it's a pretty good idea to alleviate some of the problems that we're having at the border, okay?
Okay.
I would like to propose that we have a declaration in El Paso of adopt an illegal month, okay? Starting the day after November or May 11th, okay? I really think it's a good idea. Now,
okay.
I ask that all city and county officials and all liberals in our sanctuary city and county to take in at least 2 families or 6 illegals into their homes and adopt them, take care of them. This will relieve the plight of all these illegals coming across our border after their long and perilous journey to the border in our city. And in doing so, it will relieve the guilt that these people are feeling for the extravagant lifestyles I'm sure that they've been living. And also by doing this, they could increase their ESG scores. What do you think? I think this is, and then by doing this, we can set an example for the rest of the sanctuary cities and sanctuary states throughout the United States and start a trend. This will make all these illegals feel welcome. They'll have jobs. They'll have opportunity because of the wonderful people, wonderful liberals that want these people here. What do you think?
I mean, okay, but I just want to start off by saying the people of El Paso have shown themselves to be incredibly generous. I mean,
I agree, but we got to do more. We've got a lot of people on the border right now, Andrew.
We certainly do.
They're looking for a life, something better than what they had where they came from. So we need to do more. And by just saying these things that we've been doing a lot of these things for, we're not doing enough. We need to do more. And the people evidently that are for having these people over in our city, we're going to allow them to do more. And maybe we can get the federal government to actually give them a tax break. That would be cool too. Okay, go ahead.
I think I get what you're getting at here, and the point I was getting at when I'm talking about at the generosity of El Paso. I mean, we've talked a lot about the federal, local, state government official actions that involve taxpayer money for this, but El Pasoans have certainly shown themselves willing to step up in order to make donations, assist the centers, the nonprofit side of it primarily. But here's why I don't think, even beyond the point that I think you're trying to get to at this without trying to put words in your mouth, is why even if this were to be seen as something desirable, or if there were people that were like, yes, we need to do this, full faith and and fullness of the idea, why that wouldn't be put forth as an idea by the city of El Paso or any of our local government entities, because the back end of this, we've been talking a lot about the front end, the sheltering, dealing with immediate needs, but I fully expect, and there's been maybe more of a hint of it now, but I mean, the focus has pretty much always been in this previous such instances of there being these inflection, serious, human response and humanitarian crises that we've been seeing in our area, or even in previous years. And before the pandemic, even, the focus has always been from the local governments and such on keeping it moving, on not stopping. Again, of all the efforts that we have talked about here, I have not heard of, nor am I aware of any resettlement efforts of trying to find people, semi-permanent or permanent housing in our area. All of these shelters, and what has been said by the mayor of El Paso, Oscar Leeser, we did mention this, though it has kind of fallen by the wayside in a lot of people's minds, and I can certainly understand that, is that keeping it moving, basically moving them out the area and not staying here I don't think anyone's said it in the same way I'm saying it, but that's been my takeaway and been the way it has been basically being worked on this entire time. So as much as what you're getting, I think I get what you're getting at there, but I don't think it would come up.
All these people, especially our mayor, our county judge, Veronica Escobar, of becoming the best person they can become. And all the liberals in this town, all the people that are, that voted for these people and have said how wonderful this us being a sanctuary city is, you're going to deprive these people of the happiness that they can get from doing what I'm proposing.
I'm not saying that anyone who wants to do this would be entirely prohibited to do so, but again, the basically official standpoint we've seen, including up to this point, has been keeping it moving. Again, haven't talked as much about the transportation aspect, but I fully expect, particularly as we get further along with it, and frankly, there's an argument to be made. It's already been seen with some of the busing, not exactly like the chartering that we saw towards the end of last year, but closer to it with the federal processing and things like that have already been going on this whole time. Like, I mean, last time there was a actual transportation coordinator from the city of El Paso that was working on chartering these buses. I haven't heard about that this time around, but I would be very surprised if that wasn't a component of this current response.
So you don't think it's worth having? I mean, just put it out there. Adopt an illegal month. Let's see what El Paso can truly do to help these people. Okay.
I mean,
not just take our problems and pawn them off on the rest of the society over in the United States. Let's give them an example to do what is best for the illegals and best for ourselves. Adopt an illegal month. Think about it. Okay, and stay well, stay safe. God bless, and let's go, Brandon.
Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Okay.
Tell you what, that's taking us pretty close to the top of the hour break here that we got to take. I'll talk a little bit more about this, and even if this were to be taken, I mean, we have some comments coming in on the, again, supposition there. Even if this idea were to be promoted and put forth completely sincerely, why I would even think that it might still have some, lack of acceptance, pushback. I don't know. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and of course, get into more phone calls and more comments. Again, if you want to get on that line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Just one crash right now to be aware of. Westbound Pebble Hills at Joe Battle, an accident with sheriff's deputies on the scene. I-10 eastbound is slow from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot. It's a 7-minute delay. Global Reach, it's pretty much stop traffic as you approach Montana Avenue with 35-minute delays. Northbound Mesa Street from the downtown exits up to Country Club, it's a 5-minute delay. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Okay, so we have the car payment, the rent, utilities,
and the repair bill.
What should we do?
I know. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, we could have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the Borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at ktsmradio.com.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
Stay informed at ktsmradio.com. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio. I'm Brian Shook.
Border towns are bracing for the end of Title 42 tomorrow. The COVID-era policy has been used to quickly turn back migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. Migrants are massing at the border and trying to cross into this country. The White House says the border is secure. Congressman George Santos is refusing to step down following his indictment on federal charges. The New York Republican was taken into custody Wednesday on 13 federal charges, including wire fraud and money laundering. Santos pleaded not guilty to all charges and was released on bond. President Biden is warning Americans of what's at stake if Congress fails to pass a debt ceiling hike and the U.S. defaults on its debt.
8 million Americans would lose their jobs, including 400,000 New Yorkers alone. Our economy would fall into recession, and our international reputation will be damaged in the extreme.
While speaking at SUNY Westchester Community College in Valhalla, New York, the president accused what he called extreme MAGA Republicans of holding the economy hostage, as Republicans are demanding deep spending cuts in exchange for their votes to increase the nation's borrowing limit. A panel of FDA advisors is recommending a birth control pill be made available for over-the-counter sales. Lisa Taylor has more.
2 FDA advisory panels voted unanimously to recommend the birth control pill called Opill to be made available without a prescription. A final decision on if Opill will become the first birth control pill available over the counter is expected from the FDA in the summer. There is no requirement for the FDA to follow the recommendation of the advisory panels. The 2 advisory committees met for 2 days before taking the vote.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein is back on Capitol Hill. The Democrat returned Wednesday after a months-long absence due to a bout with shingles. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Texas won't be raising the age needed to buy an assault weapon anytime soon. Legislation to do just that passed out of a committee yesterday, but did not get placed on the calendar for a vote. Parents of the Uvalde school shooting victims have been lobbying for the bill, which would require buyers be 21 years old. The San Francisco International Airport is testing wastewater from international flights for COVID-19 variants. SFO spokesperson Doug Yakel says it's the first U.S. airport to do so.
The health experts will tell you this is probably one of the best ways to identify new variants.
The goal is to find out how COVID-19 is moving around the world and what can be done about it. From the plane, the wastewater is taken to a lab and tested for the virus. This process is similar to what countries do when they test wastewater, but on a much wider level. A hound dog named Buddy Holly is this year's Best of Show winner at Westminster. Sarah Lee Kessler has more.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, girl. Winner Buddy Holly may be nothing but a hound dog, but he's a French breed with a fancy, tough-to-pronounce name, Petit Basset Griffon Vendéen, or PBGV for short. The adorable long-haired 6-year-old who lives in California is the first of his breed to snag the purple ribbon at the Westminster Kennel Club show. The 147th competition was held in New York, as always, but for the first time at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center in Queens.
2 Oklahoma police officers have a funny story to tell after responding to a report about someone heard yelling for help. Body cam video from the officers shows them arriving on the scene in a rural area in Enid and soon discovering that the sound was actually a very upset goat. The owner explained the goat was mad about being separated from another goat. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go.
No, not now. That sounds like it's going to cost you.
I know what to do. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, I could have the money in my account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
Rover's Morning Glory.
It's The Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the morning.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events. iHeartRadio Music Festival. All of the best free curated playlists. It's everything that rocks. All of the great podcasts for every interest.
This is Freddie Prinze Jr. from the Wrestling with Freddie podcast.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome. All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
You can't help but look at a car wreck on the side of the road. Yet we turn a blind eye to the things we should be looking at.
What are we doing? It's not like we didn't know. We know. We are turning our eyes.
The Glenn Beck Program.
I have no tolerance anymore for people who say, I just can't look at it.
Listen and look.
You don't have that option.
Glenn Beck. Mornings at 7.
What can you do? Here's something you can do.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod. Noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. And a lot of conversation coming in, a lot of comments being made, a lot of people adding their 2 cents. And if you so want to do so, as long as you can see us and able to get on, that's a good way to do so. And those dropping those likes and reacts, among others, Flaco Jimenez, Amber Banda, James Ratcliffe, Tony Sanchez, Rick Reyes, Bernadette Bandicole, Robbie Flores, James Holmes, Monica Cervantes, and Ida Beza Gardner. And a lot of other conversation coming in, including I'm just going to call it a bit of facetiousness getting in from the last caller and comments on it there, including, maybe some more sincere ones like John Browse and say most people have compassion only when it doesn't interfere with their lifestyle. It's easy to do things. Phrases like charity begins at home is definitely, I think, what's at play there, or being played with the word phrase. But that's part of the situation we've seen even in Mexico, in Ciudad Juarez, actually. As much as there is a permissiveness and a keep it moving attitude, certainly from there, when it came down to some of those protests affecting the travel across the international bridges, we even heard from the mayor of Juarez saying that this cannot be tolerated, to that effect there. But then more in the facetious strain, Trita Sack over on the YouTube saying, can we follow Adopt an Immigrant Month with volunteer to pay extra on your property tax bill for those who support the high property taxes we're paying? Okay, I know that you can donate to the federal government. I'm not talking about like to a campaign or anything, but specifically, you can just give the government money if you want to. I remember seeing some reporting on that years ago. So that's the federal side of things. I don't know. I'm sure if you wanted to just give the city or county or any of these taxing entities money, they wouldn't say no. But I don't know of a specific program in those cases. So it kind of like response to the first part, there's nothing stopping people from doing such a certain thing, but I promise I'd elaborate on this a little bit more. The reason why, I don't think there will be an official declaration of adopt a person crossing the border, however you want to phrase it, type month thing, is that the official point has still been to keep it moving on this side of the border as well, even as Maria Coleman in a comment will get into it a little bit deeper and more, says, it's still going to elsewhere in the U.S., just talking about the local aspect of it here entirely. But also the reason people approaching this area, I'm not aware of many, if at all. I don't know all the totality of everyone attempting to cross the border and their circumstances, but it's been the circumstance well before the current situation. Back into the 2010s, when I was doing more active reporting on this, going out to some of these organizations, that the desire to keep moving was very much a part of the individuals crossing themselves. They were not seeking to come here and immediately settle in El Paso. They usually had destinations in mind, other points of support. And that has and continues to be, unless someone has something else they can point to that I have missed, that is still the purpose of this. So that's why, as much as adopt a person potential month is, I guess, possible. Again, I would not see that being an official point because I don't think it's of interest either from the elected and government official side of things or from the individuals doing the crossing side of it. And Maria Commons' comment going on further to say, how are so-called indigent individuals expected to have access to the application app? Most migrants who enter here illegally that were residing in downtown El Paso were eventually released. Amnesty was supposedly granted, and many were not given a notice to appear in the future. Even if the goal is to move migrants along, they go somewhere. Americans will feel the impact and realize this is a national problem. I would certainly say that, yeah, it is a national thing, and just because it's out of our area doesn't mean it's no longer an impact on the country as a whole. But what I will say is that, I mean, there's expectation that they will use that app while they are in Mexico. And I mean, sure, phones like, the one I've got here can be upwards of $1,000. There are many smartphone options that are in the hundreds, if not single hundreds of dollars options these days. I mean, prepaid ones. So I know a lot of people say, oh, they've got Adidas, oh, they got cell phones, therefore they're fine, is not entirely true. I mean, that's kind of the modern face of poverty, is that, I mean, this is not even just a luxury anymore. It's a necessity in a lot of ways. So the expectation that they have these and they have access to it. I mean, a lot of places, particularly in Central and South America, they jumped over the wired generation of tech and went straight to wireless. So maybe the main forms of communication. So that's part of the answer there, but I will also say the expectation of using the app and getting into it has been a frustration even with those that have the tech, and not everyone does. There's been noted issues, particularly from advocates of immigration and immigrant issues, that they, those that have not the ability to get that or a lack of understanding, technological literacy has caused a lot of barriers there. So there's a lot of issues entangled with this, which is why I fully expect that this will be the next couple of days, if not weeks, months, years of our topics on the show. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines now for addressing some of the ones that have been accruing here. Number to call is, of course, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast in line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, illegal immigration forever. There's nothing new about it. And there's been surges, ups and downs, nothing new about it. I met a guy who was a coach for one of the elementary schools here in El Paso, a Venezuelan coach, and he had gotten a scholarship as a young man to the United States to play sports, and had stayed here and got his degree and then became an American. But he had family back in Venezuela, and he was telling me, God, it was horrible there for them. Their economy had just collapsed. It was like Weimar Germany, where people had to have barrelfuls of pesos, I guess, to buy their food and their stuff. Just sounds totally horrible. I also read a letter to the editor that Sergio Coronado, the county commissioner, wrote about meeting a guy as he was flying to and from somewhere, who turned out to be in Venezuela, and told him his story, his Exodus story, and just how harrowing the whole thing was, And I'll tell you, I'll take any of those people over the morons who attack the Capitol and anybody who supports those guys who do, okay? And about the border, the Republicans had, for the first 2 years of Trump's administration, they had control of the entire federal government, the White House, the House, the Senate for 2 years, and passed no legislation and did nothing to deal ultimately with illegal immigration, which is nothing new, which they always whip up during election time. Now, the wall spanning the entire U.S.-Mexican border that Trump promised was never built, and Mexico didn't pay for it. And he didn't significantly spend more money to hire more Border Patrol agents while he was president. And he didn't round up and deport the 11 million illegal workers. And all the fear-mongering about the border is going to cause further deaths at the hands of xenophobic nuts like the one Trump incited to kill 23 people in El Paso, drive 600 miles to do it here. Now, one of these killers also came from Arvin, where this guy came from. And now we have this incident of this guy who plows into 23 immigrants at a immigrant center. And this guy's a Mexican-American white supremacist, if you can believe that. Man, that is totally crazy. Trumpism has driven millions of Americans into madness and to becoming lemmings in his cult. And his unprecedented and unpresidential history was made yesterday with a Manhattan jury finding that he sexually abused and defamed Jean Carroll, who Trump has to pay $5 million in damages now. Now, she accused him of sexually assaulting her while they were in a chance encounter in a Manhattan department store. And he denied knowing her at all and didn't have the gumption to face his accuser in court. But he called her a liar, and so she sued him for battery, and she won. And she had evidence, including 2 of her girlfriends, who she called right after he raped her. And then she also had 2 other women there who claimed that Trump sexually assaulted them. And his deposition was introduced as evidence, and that's where he mistakes Carol as his wife Marla, having said that Carol wasn't his type. And then Carol, I tell you what, this Carol woman, she was a fox when she was young, like Melania Trump, the hottest first lady the U.S. has ever had.
We're getting pretty far afield from the tenuous connections we're drawing there. There has been, of course, talk about this on our other national shows on this, but getting back to the local issues as part of it here, as I am definitely getting some comments on already. I mean, okay, if you want to say that the last administration is certainly a contribution to this, I would frankly agree with you. There wasn't much done. I mean, there were certain policies that were passed. I mean, the Remain in Mexico, MPP, the migrant protection protocols, but it's not those were policies. Laws certainly were not passed. But I would also note, if you're going to give that same kind of excoriation to those that were in power then, same thing didn't happen during the start of this administration. Again, if you want to say that I don't like what these guys did or didn't do, yeah, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But let's be fair with the scope here. This hasn't happened since, if I got my notes right here, the Reagan administration. And even then, there are some people that are still not happy with what happened at that point in time either. So consensus has been fleeting, and new laws actually coming into place in this has not happened in my lifetime. I am firmly confident in saying that. So we keep seeing these policies, these back and forth, this going to court or not. And there wasn't the full majority within the Senate within that. But I mean, come on, this has been a campaigned on issue and nothing being done with it for quite some time now. You have to admit that much.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said exactly that. There's nothing new about that. There's an old whipping horse. It's a GOP thing, along with crime. Crime is rising. How about all these killings? White supremacist killings. It's horrible. The country is going mad with guns and gun nuts and Trumpism and all the division within the country, and all these people who have bought into the big lie and a wholehearted, all the way. And the Republicans want to make this guy their presidential nominee. It looks like he's going to get it. That's unbelievable. That a man with such a checkered past and all kinds of accusations and criminal investigations of what he's done that they would want this kind of person for a president. It blows my mind, Andrew.
I think there's a misunderstanding, frankly, of the appeal of the former president for those that decided to vote for him here. And again, if you're expecting the same kind of tactics that have, frankly, worked against previous political candidates, I'll forever reference Michael Dukakis, who, no, I was not of a sufficient age to really be aware of or deal with or vote for, certainly well before my time. But I mean, the idea of just even a goofy circumstance, the hint of a scandal enough to sink someone, to say that would work in any of these circumstances certainly been tried, and the way this rhetoric is ramping up on this part as well. I mean, we'll see how people make their individual choices on it here, but I think it ends up being a facet of human nature that even evidence disproving a point that you firmly believe in can therefore be put forth as evidence of why the point is still right, that there's so much opposition to it. So I'm not saying that anyone should or shouldn't vote for anyone here. We don't make political recommendations as part of the editorial decisions we make on this program, which is not what we do, but we'll certainly be covering as we get closer to it. The interesting part, if you actually want to get into that aspect, and yeah, this is Firmly Friday territory, would be the seizure or lack thereof of any of the primary opponents of the former president so far. So we'll see if it gets into that. In the meantime, tell you what, we absolutely have to take that first break right now of this hour, so appreciate the point in the call on the local aspects for what it's worth, but we'll go ahead and get to that next break and get back on the line here. So if you want to add your 2 cents, of course, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
One crash right now on your El Paso freeways. It's on I-10 eastbound at the Piedra Street exit. It's blocking the left shoulder. A minor backup to Cotton right now. I-10 eastbound between Trans Mountain and the Patriots, a 7-minute delay. I-10 westbound from George Dieter Zaragoza exit to the Patriot, a 5-minute backup. And stop traffic on Global Reach southbound approaching Montana Avenue. That's a 30-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's $3 breakfast deal. Wendy's $3 breakfast deal is your choice of bacon or sausage, egg, and Swiss croissant, plus a small seasoned potatoes for just $3. Break your morning routine and get your $3 breakfast deal today. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Tara, quote, "My doctor wanted me to do saline rinses for my allergies, but I've never been able to successfully use a neti pot. Navage uses suction power, so it's foolproof. There are nights when I'll have particularly bothersome allergies. I'll bust it out, and the results are immediate. It's such a relief. It's become a lifesaver," unquote. She's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
Finding great people to hire can be like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Their powerful matching technology delivers so many qualified candidates. It's like finding a needle in a needle stack. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. For less hay and more needles, head to ZipRecruiter.
And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. At ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments, conversation. Again, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. As, keep talking about the local issues. It's not Friday yet, folks, but it's always around the corner. So let's dive straight back into it right now. We do have Stephen on the east side with us right now. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
So, I called to talk about the border. Of course, Mr. Trump derangement syndrome called up, so I just have to say something real quick.
Sure.
Yes, Donald Trump has to pay money. It is basically a he said, she said situation. And there wasn't enough evidence for a criminal suit. The state of New York changed the law to change the statute of limitations on this so that these accusations could move forward, these kind of accusations. And so he does have no more evidence for this than there is for the accusation against Joe Biden by Tara Reid. Tara Reid told her story to friends about what Biden did to her, allegedly. And so I think it's actually a bad precedent to charge people when there's no actual physical evidence or anything like that. But moving on, that's not why I called.
Fair enough.
Okay, so when it comes to the immigration situation, I think it is a little bit interesting that the laws and rules that they're deciding to put in place are actually quite similar to what Trump had put in. So what they're saying is if you are from Venezuela and you want to seek asylum, then you will go to an embassy or a place in Colombia. It has to be, the neighboring country, and that's where you should be seeking asylum. This is rules. These are rules that should have been set up a long time ago. I do agree with Raul in the sense that there are people in both parties who don't really want to solve this problem.
Sure.
Donald Trump actually was a president who did want to stop illegal immigration. And the problem is not only did the Democrats do everything in their power to stop him from securing the border when he was president, but there are some Republicans who, their interests don't really want to solve the problem on the border either. And of course, it doesn't help that whenever someone wants to try to come up with some kind of solution to stem the flow of illegal immigration, anybody who tries to do that is called a racist. And so I guess since Biden is going to implement similar rules that Trump had in place, it's fair game to now call Biden and his administration all racist as well.
I mean, the implications of that have already been being made by some in the, immigration advocacy sphere, saying that this is more of the same, basically. So, I mean, I think you might be putting that forth as a, just desserts, but that is already being said, as far as I'm aware, that this has some of the same implications about, okay, if you want to come down to it, I mean, there have been similar-ish policies. I mean, MPP was in place for a minute. The my protection protocol, so-called Remain in Mexico policy, was in place for a minute. There was this on again, off again, as was actually part of the subject of the interviews that we brought to you from the previous times. We've had discussions on this last year with the former acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, kind of comparing what is in place and what wasn't. And I said at that point in time, and more recently since, I do believe that there was maybe a willingness or a lack of willingness actually to see that fully removed by the administration, because the situation that we're at the time is that it wasn't their policy. And they could argue that, hey, this is something we had to keep around. The courts are forcing us to. Oh, no, what are we going to do? Don't throw me into that briar patch kind of mentality, it kind of felt like. And with them having to put this one forth, now this is firmly their stamp on it. And the fact that it comes out with some striking similarities to previous ones, I think it mostly comes down to the persona behind it. I don't think that this administration, at the very least in the international sphere, the way the cartels, coyotes, all of that propaganda is being put forth, is seen as strong in this issue, whereas the previous administration was. And I mean, there's further arguments to be made that part of the measures were punitive, even in nature, as also part of the purpose behind it, in order to not only make it more difficult, but also to further deter it, not even just as a, hey, don't come, you won't be allowed in, but as a part in the process of the policies, make it seem like if you're going to come, it's going to be mildly punitive when it comes down to it. I mean, there might not be exactly jail time, though I think that was also a part of it at certain points, but I mean, it can be read into some of the policies that we saw during the previous administration. So I think that's one of the major aspects, and why maybe more widespread, like you're calling for, that same label being applied may not happen with this and the return to the similar-ish policies. I think the argument is very much there that they are definitely in the same vein, if not exactly with the same spirit behind him. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I said it before that the number of people coming over is largely dependent on the perception
Sure.
of whether or not people think if they get to the border, they can get in and they can stay. So if people believe they can get in and they believe if they get in, they can stay, then you're going to have very large numbers coming over. And so it is something that should have been addressed in the sense that, one, you shouldn't allow the perception to go out there that if you get in, you can stay, which is actually largely true. I can't recall exactly what the numbers are, but since Biden became president, I know it's more than 1 million people have gone in without even being processed. That's over 1 million, and that may have been just 1 year's worth, actually. So at this point, who knows what it is, but 1 million people got in and they're staying, and they were never caught by Border Patrol, never processed. So that's one part of it. And then you get the people who are processed and then allowed into the country, which I'm sure is a very, very large number as well. So it isn't that it's just a perception. It is the reality. And so the debate in recent weeks about whether the border is open, it's like, well, if you get to the border and you're allowed to get in, then for those people, it's quite open.
It's almost kind of the way you put it there brings up a thought we've been having recently. That's, I mean, the differences in the enforcement avenues that are being taken both by the state and the federal, particularly. I mean, the federal is pretty much on the response to it, at the very least under this administration, while it's in the previous administration was very much on, deterrence. And that is very much also a focus of the state level efforts with them, deploying, enhanced barriers, not even just on the, concrete banks of the Rio Grande in our area, but down even onto the soft banks of it that's like closer to the center of the channel. Basically, it almost seems, as much as there is water present sometimes there, it almost seems like they're doing a version of like the wet foot, dry foot type rule that you saw in place, and like it still is, as far as I'm aware, in places like the Gulf Coast, particularly southern Florida, when it deals with refugees coming across from, say, Cuba or other areas like that. That if you manage to get across and get on dry land, they have to deal with you. If they stop you in the water, they turn you around. So again, not totally applicable because there's, among other things, not always water in the Rio Grande in the areas that we're doing this enforcement in. Apparently that release coming either later this month or early next month is my latest I've heard on that. But point is that seems to be, at the very least, I mean, that's very much been a focus of Operation Lone Star and the way that Governor Greg Abbott has been going about this.
And there's been some gaslighting going on, like by people like Raul, because remember how adamant the Biden administration was to not putting the barriers in place. Remember, Trump asked the Border Patrol, what do you guys need in order to secure this border? And one of the things that Border Patrol requested were barriers, walls, have a certain design, particularly in high traffic areas. And that's what Donald Trump was doing. It doesn't have to necessarily be a wall across the entire border, but what they specifically requested and they had put higher priority on were those barriers. And those contracts were made and those areas of wall were paid for. And Biden made them stop, even though they were paid for. So they still had to pay those contracts, but without the wall being made. That's how adamant the Biden administration was about not putting these things in place the Border Patrol asked for. And that is something that actually happened. And when it comes to Venezuela, since it was also brought up, why do people want to escape from Venezuela? Because they followed Cuba, they followed these communist countries, these socialist countries, and they applied these rules of playing games with government taking over corporations, government printing excess money. And if people who are wanting these kinds of policies and this kind of craziness and chaotic thing at the border had their way, we would be doing the same type of policies here. And so I think they're a big problem and they vote. And so we have to address these issues without allowing them to say, well, if you don't like chaos like this at the border, if you don't like these tent cities, if you don't like these tens of thousands of people coming over illegal every month, then you're a xenophobe and you're a racist. We can't allow those people to get away with those kinds of accusations.
I think there's been a lot of political hay to be made on the talk, but not action on this whole situation and the rhetoric on both sides of this stuff. If you don't like our policies for securing it, therefore you're anti-American, or there's been a whole lot of rhetoric and not a whole lot of solutions put forth. Again, my entire time on this planet has not seen new substantive immigration laws passed in any way. And I mean, whether or not you agree with the idea that it's a broken immigration system or not, the fact that it's not responsive to the current situation and specifically what we are facing in our region at this point in time, I think is pretty well laid bare for all. I'm not aware of any reasonable person, again, out there that is saying, yeah, this is perfect, this is exactly what should be happening, that I would call sane. Let's just put it that way.
Well, my final comment is, I said it before, we already allow 1 million per year to legally enter the country. That's a perfectly reasonable number. And I've even been open, I've said it on this program before, people may be willing to make it 2 million, but it's all done in an orderly process, not this chaos, not letting people across without being processed at the border. I imagine over the years to come, we will see situations where there are people who crossed over the border without being processed at all. I mean, you've got 1, maybe 2 million to speak of so far under the Biden administration, and they're going to be problematic, to say the least. But it's nothing about being xenophobic. It's nothing about being racist. We just want an orderly process where everyone who crosses the border is checked out, background check, all of those things that should be applied to people who want to enter legally.
I mean, I've said this before as well, that there's, in this day and age, the amount of technology available, it's only a matter of will, or the lack thereof, like we've been talking about, for why there is not more systems in place. I mean, sure, border wall, build the wall, all of those chants were great political hay, and they made a point in that way. But the actual reality of it is that, yeah, building a physical barrier, and I've said this for a minute now, that building a physical barrier across the entirety of the southern, U.S.-Mexico border is both not necessarily and maybe not even desirable in some instances. I mean, Big Bend, among other things, that's been one of the reasons that representatives from the Texas 23rd Congressional District have often come into conflict, as just by nature of their district, with some of the national Republicans on those issues. But also, if you just have a wall, if you just have the physical, and a lot of people are saying, just do that and we're good, without having any of the infrastructure, human and otherwise, support it, it's not going to do anything. Sure, it may act as a bit of a deterrent, but we've also seen people more than willing to attempt a crossing of even the versions that we've had in different ways in El Paso for decades now. So why not just go straight to the solution of controlling and knowing everyone that is crossing and attempting to cross into the United States through whatever means, and deploy that level of technology? It simply comes down to a matter of will, in my mind. Well, appreciate.
I think that only border wall thing was just a straw man. That was never the only thing being proposed. But yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
All right. Take care.
All right. And with that, we super got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this, we'll get to the calls we can before the end of the program. If you want to squeeze on that line, that number to do so is, of course, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Thank you for. We'll be back after this break, and thank you for sticking around with us here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. Starting tomorrow, the Biden administration will deny asylum to migrants who show up at the border without first applying online or seeking protection in a country they passed through. That's according to a new rule that was released today. It's part of new measures meant to crack down on illegal border crossings while creating new legal pathways, including a plan to open 100 regional migration hubs. The crackdown on asylum seekers is similar to a 2019 Trump-era policy that was eventually struck down in federal court. Migrant advocates say that Biden is curtailing the right to seek asylum as it existed since the enactment of the Refugee Act of 1980. Meantime, the city of El Paso today held a news conference at a vacant middle school that they once again will use as an emergency migrant shelter. Bassett Middle School was first used as a migrant shelter last year during the most recent migrant influx. Mayor Oscar Leeser today said that the number of migrants on El Paso streets has gone down in the past 24 hours, but he says no one knows what'll happen next week, as Title 42 does expire tomorrow. That was a Trump-era health order that allowed border agents to rapidly expel most asylum seekers. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
An earlier crash towards downtown on I-10 eastbound after Piedra Street is blocking the left lane. I-10 eastbound is slow with 13-minute delays now between Trans Mountain and the 54 Patriot. You can expect 7-minute delays on the I-10 westbound from Zaragoza to the 54 Patriot. And on the Patriot southbound after Pershing Drive, road debris is blocking the left lane. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. We'll see gusty conditions wind down through the overnight. Wind advisory in effect through midnight. By tomorrow morning, a cooler and nicer morning, lows back down into the 40s and 50s. For our Thursday, mostly sunny, just breezy, cooler as well, high around 84 degrees. We're still looking at shower and storm chances, though, as we move into your Saturday as well as your Sunday. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go.
Sharing your health story matters.
I lost my sister to cervical cancer. When I'm teaching about women's cancers, I'm thinking about her, and I'm doing this for her.
Joining the All of Us research program means contributing to research that may help people of different backgrounds.
This research process will only become better if we have more diverse communities involved. We need to be represented. We need to be part of this medical breakthrough.
Take part in the largest health database of its kind.
Get involved with all of us because any medical breakthrough that we'll see has to have your input. It has to have part of you in it.
Share your health stories today and help guide the discoveries of tomorrow. Learn more at joinallofus.org/NIH. This message is paid for by the All of Us Research Program.
When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go. This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. And Talk El Paso brought to you in part by Ruli's International Kitchen. If you've ever tasted fusion like this before, find them online at rulisik.com. That's Ruli's, the letter I, the letter K, as in internationalkitchen.com. They got Mother's Day brunch plans already coming up, and also, of course, as seen on diners, drive-ins, and dives. Great little gourmet dive here in El Paso. So I've been going to them for years, literally catered my wedding. So check them out online, not too far from our station. Actually, again, rulisik.com. But we got a lot more talking about here, including other comments coming in. James Ratcliffe asking about the whole immigration and border security situation. How many are expected to cross this evening? That's kind of a difficult, that's a cloudy crystal ball question. All I can say is that of the estimated tens of thousands that are previous estimates anyway, don't know if that is again changed too much, been waiting in Ciudad Juarez, there's about like 10 to 15 anticipated to be crossing in short order. So short answer is there's expected to be a number. I'm sure how much of it is expectations vary. But I mean, it's been going on for a minute now, even before this point. Again, when I always direct people towards the Migrant Situational Awareness Dashboard over on elpasotexas.gov/migrant-crisis, we saw an uptick of about 3,600 total releases in our community last calendar week, and for the last complete day so far, we're at about 726. So not the highest watermark of when there was towards the end of the year, the third to last week of the year, about 10,000. But again, getting closer to it than we have been previously. We've been hovering around that like 1,000 to 1,500 level before this point, and the CBP does note that its in custody rolling 7-day average is about 4,500 up over recent weeks, actually, since they saw the kind of height of it about 5,000 in the end of the year. So that's some of the data I can give you. Anyway, let's get back to those phone lines now. Again, that number to call if you want to squeeze on before the end of the show, 915-544-5876, for KTSM. We do have Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hello there. Yes, this perception, Stephen was talking about, that the borders are open, it largely and mostly exists because of right-wing people fear-mongering and promoting the idea that the borders are open and bending over backwards to promote that rhetoric all over social media. So that's just right-wing incompetence at its finest. But I didn't really want to get into that. The mass shooting in Allen, Texas this past weekend, it's important to note that it was committed by another right-wing extremist and white supremacist. Every child and adult he slaughtered was a person of color with the exception of the security guard. His last name was Garcia, and Hispanics can be white supremacists. Many of your followers are another testament to this reality that conservatives fail to be able to comprehend. And you could be a Hispanic white supremacist, a black white supremacist, an Asian white supremacist. White supremacy is an ideology, ideas, beliefs, actions, all of which transcend the color of one's skin. Ideology, ideas, beliefs, and actions encouraged and promoted by mainstream right-wing information sources, not just in regards to talking points related to immigrants, but efforts to reduce racism against black people as well. And on that note, in more local news, another racist, conservative, and murderer from Texas was sentenced to 25 years in prison today for murdering a peaceful protester and veteran who was peacefully protesting against the racism black people experience in America. The conservative murderer, Perry, honked at the protesters as they walked through the streets before driving his car into the crowd, running a red light. This peaceful protester was open carrying. And after gunning down at this peaceful protester opposed to racism, when being questioned by police, this conservative extremist said, I didn't want to give him a chance to aim at me, clearly communicating that the gun was being peacefully open carried and was not aimed at him at all. And Greg Abbott said he was going to pardon him before he was even sentenced. So what we have here is mainstream Republicans encouraging and defending right-wing terrorism against those peacefully protesting against racism.
Let's get the order of operations here quick. Sure, he hasn't been sentenced yet, but he was already convicted of it. So trying to say that he already knew the decision or was anticipating it, I mean, the dude was going to get a sentence. He had already been found. We did this discussion in previous months, I want to say, and was looking it up and found I was watching a hell of a lot of live streams at that point in time during these protests, during 2020, aftermath of George Floyd and all of that. And do believe I found the video that was on this and watched it at that point in time as well. That, the person that was open carrying, Foster, 28-year-old, as noted by the Texas Tribune here, 28-year-old white man who was legally carrying an AK-47 and driving it into the crowd here does not fit. I mean, the way that I saw the video that you're talking about there, but certainly did approach it. And among other things, Foster challenged him and wasn't just slung on the back carrying the rifle, had it in his hands, among other things. The videos of that I saw did not show him raise it or not. It did not show his position of the rifle overall here. So if you have your determination of this and yet you're unhappy about the way that this potentially would progress, I mean, the governor does not have the unilateral power to pardon like the president does, but he has asked essentially that a board look into this in order to see if there would be something for particularly the state charges of this. And this has become more than a bit of, of course, Abbott has posted on Twitter saying that Texas is one of the strongest stand your ground laws of self-defense that cannot be nullified by a jury or a progressive district attorney. So obviously being made political bones here as well. So, if you're unhappy about the case, you're entitled to it, but trying to draw that to the local issues as well doesn't quite calculate for me in this circumstance.
Well, this deals with Texas politics and how left-wing people are being robbed of their Second Amendment rights, and this toxic culture Greg Abbott is in promoting right-wing terrorism in our state by sending the message: if you're left-wing and oppose racism against black people, you have no Second Amendment rights. And right-wing information sources, including yourself, contribute to these fantasies conservatives have of harming and killing BLM protesters with your dehumanizing racist characterizations of them that you've made in the past. I gave very nuanced arguments about white supremacy and some of the good things that BLM was doing to decrease racism against black people, and you immediately went into you dehumanizing them and characterizing them as looters and robbers instead of acknowledging all of the good that they're doing to reduce racism.
Okay, let's make this perfectly clear. Racism is bad. Anyone who says that someone else is inferior or they are inherently superior based on nothing besides the color of their skin is someone I am always going to disagree with. I have said that vociferously on this show, and don't think I'm not noting that you are characterizing what I've said without actually quoting me on it, because here's a hint for you. You're not going to find me quoting as saying as that, oh, no, yeah, these people were just all bad and there's nothing potentially good about it. Talking about racial issues in this country, I firmly oppose, and I am on record on this point of saying that, yeah, just saying, oh, no, we don't talk about that at the table is bunk, because that's how we get into these situations where it just doesn't get talked about. I mean, what the idea of polite conversation, talk about, religion, politics, finances, and racial issues. You would very easily, I think, put into that as well. And so just saying that, no, we don't talk about that is completely incorrect. And yeah, the people who are actually out there peacefully protesting, that is fully their right, and they should do so. Regardless of the issue they are going on, that is our right as Americans, and one that we should vociferously defend. Now, those that therefore use or abuse such rights in order to, either lead riots or things like that, they should also be condemned. They've also been talked about. I mean, it's often brought up in the same kind of circumstances as January 6th. I don't think that it's completely an apples to apples comparison, but let's just say anyone using any right in order to commit a crime should be held to the full account of the law, regardless of the reason that they were doing it, whether it be a left wing or a right wing one. Now, I would think that should be a pretty common sense idea for y'all, but I'm sure you're going to come back and say I'm wrong in some way on this.
Yeah, you just did the exact same thing. You characterized the protest that this right-wing extremist and racist drove his car into as a looting or enabling looting and rioting when it was undeniably peaceful.
Dude, you're doing the same kind of argument as of saying that if I was to say I like apples, you come back to me and say, so what, oranges are bad? You hate oranges? You hate everything? That isn't exactly what I said. I did not mention this specific protest. I mentioned the general idea of having a protest, it being a good thing, but anyone using that as cover to commit crimes is a bad thing. So if you're, with your philosophy degrees that you often tout, unable to understand this, but it just doesn't serve your point, therefore you're going to ignore it, or the many times that you have claimed to have quoted me, tried to, and either gotten it out of context or just been wrong, and still waiting on those umpteen apologies, by the way, including the times you have said, oh, you'll never cover this when we already literally have. Yeah, we're going to move on from that for now. I think we got time for one more quick call on the line right now. We do have Jeff on the west side here with us right now. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hey, first off, it's kind of funny that you put me in right after that guy, because this almost reminds me of like point counterpoint. And I could easily start off my statements by quoting an old SNL skit with Jane, you ignorant, but I'm not going to go any further than that.
Thank you.
And in this case, it would be Eric. But yeah, either way, back on the real reason I was calling is back on the actual local issues.
Thank you.
Of immigration. Through my employer, I have to very frequently be right down on the border. It's part of my job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because of that, because of my employer's policies, I'm not allowed to carry any form of protection on myself. Now, with the fiasco that is the current border issues going on, regardless of which party is causing it, regardless of how people want to frame it, the fact of the matter is that they've created so much turmoil and so much chaos in the downtown areas and swamped them that they're unable to go ahead and cover certain areas as well as they should. And it has nothing to do with racism whatsoever, like your previous caller thinks everybody's a racist. But it's not exactly a comforting feeling to be 100% unarmed and know that the day before you were there, or the night before you were there, they busted a half a dozen Syrians coming across right where you were. Going down there a month later and finding out that there were some Iranians coming across, and every single one of them that were busted coming across, they were all found to be terrorists, every one of them. And they were coming in to do no good. They're taking advantage of the policies put in place by whichever party, regardless of party, because the parties, both of them, have screwed up. So those policies are putting law-abiding citizens just wanting to go about their day, do their job, putting them at risk, myself included. And it really kind of sucks to constantly have to watch over your shoulder and then be being called from your bosses saying, hey, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And you're like, well, no, I'm trying to get things done, but I'm also minding my security. So, because the only form of defense is to basically jump in the vehicle and leave in the event that you see something going on. So, however they want to look at it, fact of the matter is, this is putting people in danger, regardless of what the policy is. Because the only way you're going to stop it, yes, you need to have a fence in place, absolutely. Before you start bailing the water on a sinking ship, you plug the hole. Then you start bailing the water. Well, you know what? If you've got if you're plugging the hole, that being the fence, now you need to have people all over that area bailing water. So protecting the territory that has now become either a deterrent or at least a means of slowing people down.
Tell you what, we're pretty much at the end of the show here. I'll just say this again. I don't think anyone reasonably thinks that this is a good situation. It's a viable one. It's one that should be allowed to continue in any way, either on the actual policies as part of it, or as the support, the supplies, the systems in place. None of it's like particularly functional or good at this point in time. So we'll have to talk further about this. Again, tomorrow is coming. We'll have a lot more that we talk about as we get further on to the show. But we'll just have to leave it there for today because we are completely out of time for this one. So I appreciate the point in the call, and I do appreciate everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, and participate in the show if you actually wanted to talk about these issues that go along and affect us here in the Borderland. So as much as we've had time today, we'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m., as we do every Monday through Friday. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. In the meantime, until we're back up with you, I want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. Starting tomorrow, the Biden administration will deny asylum to migrants who show up at the border without first applying online or seeking protection in a country they passed through. That's according to a new rule.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A multi-vehicle accident on the I-10 eastbound at Airway is off on the left shoulder. There's some minor slowing. I-10 eastbound after Piedras, an accident from earlier, still blocking the left lane, causing a minor delay. I-10 eastbound is slow, 15-minute delays, Trans Mountain over to the Patriot. And northbound Geronimo at Edgemere, a school bus is blocking the right lane, stay to the left. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. When your ride fires on all cylinders, so do you. That's why Napa is on a mission to keep you in motion. With nearly 6,000 Napa Auto Parts stores and over 17,000 Napa Auto Care centers, the Napa network has everything you need to get up and go.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Tara, quote, "My doctor wanted me to do saline rinses for my allergies, but I've never been able to successfully use a neti pot. Navage uses suction power, so it's foolproof. There are nights when I'll have particularly bothersome allergies. I'll bust it out and the results are immediate. It's such a relief. It's become a lifesaver." Unquote. She's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthy